Hello everybody, and welcome back to another EPI video. Today is October 26th, 2024, and we are just 10 days away from the presidential election, as well as congressional elections and various governor's races. It is going to be an exciting night, and though we likely won't know the winner on the night of. But I wanted to get into so much data, some stuff not as much data, just more interesting stuff to look at, but a lot of data that proves that I truly believe 10 days before the election, Donald Trump is surging. And obviously for Harris, this is at the worst possible time. First, major news. Look at the national aggregate. Trump leads by 0.1. Wait, but he leads. This is the first time Donald Trump has led the average for the national popular vote in this average since August 4th, I think. Yes. On August 4th, he led. Never since then has he until right now. He leads by 0.1. He finally has. That means the national popular vote, according to the polls, is a dead heat. Could not be closer. You had Harvard-Harris, which had Harris up 2. You had Atlas Intel and Fox, which had Trump up 3 and 2, as well as CNBC, as well as Harris-X. All right? We had USA Today, Suffolk. She's up 1. These are all polls Trump would win, by the way. The only two good ones for her were Ipsos and Morning Consult, which had her up 3 and 4, respectively. Rasmussen had her up 1 only. So what does that show? She was not, these two. The problem with Morning Consult and Ipsos is that those were the two polls that showed the whole time. Like, they were always the best polls for Harris. That is the problem. They are likely overestimating her support. Then you have Tip Tracking Poll, which has a tie. Wall Street Journal, which has Trump up 3. And then 3 ties from CNN, New York Times Siena, and Emerson. All much better pollsters when it comes to the national popular vote, at least Emerson. New York Times Siena's had a rocky past on that, and so is CNN. But, it looks like they're a whole lot closer this time. This shows a huge momentum shift. Guys, Harris is done. If the national popular vote is even within a point, she is for sure. If it's within 2, she's likely losing. But if it's within 1, or if she loses, she is done. So this is bad news for the Harris campaign. I do believe it's a bit of a thing that, Trump will always get a little bit more support than he should. Not necessarily that the polls are overestimating Trump, which is also possible. More that, as, people that have already voted are slightly less likely to respond to the polls. And that's what happened in 2022 to Republicans. They surged late, too late. And it was not reflective because the early voters that voted, they were overwhelmingly Democrat. And there would drop off in the responses. There was response bias that favored Republicans. And that's why people were like, oh, the polls have finally caught up. Even myself, I was fooled. And then when we actually analyzed it, we're like, oh. Now, this time it's much less because I've seen some early vote polls where Harris is only winning people that are voting early by under 10 points. So the drop-off is going to be much, it's going to be a tiny of effect, if any. And so this is not great news. Trump is surging at the wrong time for the Harris campaign. You can even look at the generic congressional ballot, which Republicans hadn't led in since, oh my goodness, like to this point, the Republicans hadn't led. These are crazy numbers. They had not led since August 6th, so similar. Now they're up almost a point, 0.8. As you can see, a lot of good polls for the Republicans here. And they don't even need to win the national popular vote of the House to win the House. It's a very tight race, and it really is based on individual districts. But another surge for Republicans broadly. Look at 538's forecast. Trump at 53. Like, this is his highest. This is as high as he's ever been in this forecast against Kamala Harris. You can look at win probability. I guess he was at 54 at this point, but like ever since it was released, which was around here, I think. Harris was just it wasn't incredible for her, but she was definitely leading. No, this time Trump is at 53. This is his highest since the forecast was released, and it shows him winning Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina relatively stably, as well as super narrowly Nevada and Pennsylvania. And the only states he's losing are Wisconsin and Michigan. Very good news for him. And although this might not be right, these forecasts significantly overestimated Democrats in 2016 and 2020, but also overestimated Republicans in 2022. So we will see. But that is good news for him. You can even see on the House, Republicans are at 53, which, this wasn't released that long ago, but same thing, just like how the generic congressional ballots like that. You look at this, Trump appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast for nearly 3 hours. And, who knows if the people that watch that, because it is the most popular podcast in America, will view him favorably, if it will switch any votes. But it was an opportunity that Joe Rogan might not give to Kamala Harris. And that's also pretty huge, considering all things considered, it's pretty huge. if he made a good impression. I'm not entirely sure. You can look at the headlines, but you'll see. I mean, Joe Rogan is a podcast where a lot of people think he's very real, and he doesn't want you to be selling baloney, I guess you could say. And so you may not like him, you may hate him, but he is the most popular podcast. And it's just good for Trump that he was on there. And then you even see before Harris snub, Washington Post refused to endorse Dukakis. Obviously, the Washington Post is a left-leaning newspaper. And also they kind of are maybe a bit of a left-leaning pollster when they do conduct their polls. But the point is they refused to endorse Kamala Harris, which is surprising because they've endorsed a lot of other Democrats. I think they endorsed Biden in 2020, but don't take my word for it. The point is, it's surprising. They're saying, they don't want to endorse Jim Dukakis. And who knows if this is true. This looks like a little bit right-wing, and this is just something they're saying to make Trump feel better and Kamala Harris feel bad. But, it is possible, slightly possible, that the Washington Post didn't want to endorse her because of dying momentum. And then, which she doesn't really have momentum. Even if she's winning, we can agree she doesn't have momentum. Because while polls may not be right, remember that polls can show shifts. And then Harris is cratering at the worst possible time. There's one data point above all that suggests Trump and Vance are resounding victory on November 5th. It's this. By a nearly 40-point margin in the polling averages, Americans are more inclined to believe the country is currently on the wrong track than the right track. I actually don't believe that at all. But, again, this is Josh Hammer. I think Josh Hammer is a conservative. But still, a lot of this article is true. There are other reasons to believe the 45th president is the best possible time. I mean, his McDonald's stuff might have been good for him. You look at this, but Trump is surging at the right time. And this doesn't actually have that many good points, to be honest, this article. But it is true that throughout I've laid out with the polling and the forecasts and him appearing on Joe Rogan, Washington Post not endorsing him, these are all not good signs. Nate Silver, don't trust his gut, he said himself. But his gut says Donald Trump will win the election. This is a man who significantly underestimated Donald Trump in 2016, though, less than everybody else did, and in 2020. And he says his gut is Donald Trump will win. I think the Silver Bulletin slightly favors Trump as well as 538's forecast. But for a man that's never had Trump high, this is not great news for Kamala Harris. It really isn't. And, it's looking concerning, Forget the 13 keys. I think they're good. I think the problem is I don't know if Alan Lichtman knows to comply them because, again, you can see I'm very unbiased here. And what I'm showing you is I'm saying, hey, Josh Hammer, he's a conservative. This might not all be true. This looks like a right-wing article. Nate Silver, well, he's a liberal. Alan Lichtman, let's be honest here. He's a liberal. He might not be applying his keys right. When I applied the keys, I found 7 true for Harris, which is 1 short of her winning. It really depends. I even had the economy keys as true, which would make a lot of conservatives mad. But there were a couple keys. I think there were 2 keys I didn't have Lichtman that were true. I think one of them was I don't think Americans at all would perceive America having a military success abroad. And then there was one more. Oh, it was that Kamala Harris didn't have a primary challenge, which she obviously would have if she was in an open primary. So those 2, I think I would give it to Trump. That's the thing. So, and I still gave the economy keys to Harris. So I don't know if Lichtman knows to apply it. But all this, whether it's the polls, as you can see, the forecasts, Joe Rogan potentially helping Trump, these articles pointing out that stalling momentum, Nate Silver's gut feeling, or even now, the betting markets. Which, remember when on my first video of this channel, Trump was up 7, he's up 30 now? It's just surreal. He's up 65 in Nevada. I'll talk about why he's up 30 in Nevada later. Up 46 in Arizona, up 42 in Georgia, up 40 in North Carolina, 14 in Wisconsin. His worst is Michigan, which he's still up 8, and up 20 in Pennsylvania. So an absolute surge for Republicans. Even at the Senate level, you can see they're at highs. Even, at 59% in Ohio Senate race. So they're looking pretty good in those betting odds, too. And the last thing I want to touch on in this video is early vote data. So this is Ballotpedia. This is partisan affiliation of registered voters. I will warn you guys that it was last updated March of 2024. So, that's a lot older news. But this is the best I could get. And this is what I'm going to be using. 30 states have partisan voter registration. So we're going to now look at the early voting data and see, does that also show a Trump surge? So let's see. So if you look at Arizona, I'm looking at the 4 swing states because, of course, you can see here. 3 of the 7 swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia, can't have partisan early vote data. So I'm going to look at the 4 swing states, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada, and see their data. So first, Arizona. So at this point in time, 11 days, Democrats were up, as you can see here, about 7.5 points. Now Republicans are up 7. That's a 14-point shift. And that's good data for Republicans. There are a lot of McCain Republicans that are registered as Republicans, so I don't think it's quite as good as it looks. But again, I could see why Democrats would be concerned about early voting data in Arizona. They've talked about it. It's not looking great for them. And then you could go next to model party. This also has model party. I like doing registered party because it's actual data, while model party is a guess. And although model party also looks really good for Republicans, in some cases better, I don't trust it as much and won't put as much stock into it. Now, going to North Carolina, another interesting point, because as you can see here, in 2020, at the same point, what were Dems? They were up 11, right? You can see it here. But also at the same point, Republicans are up almost a point. So not as big as of a shift, and nobody actually knows how the large share of unaffiliated voters are voting. So not too much to tell, but the fact that in a state where, as you can see here, there are 2% more Democrats than Republicans, where in early voting, where we know on election day voting will be really conservative, Republicans are outvoting Democrats, bad sign for the Democrats. Nevada is particularly concerning for the Democrats. I mean, it's stunning data here, as we can see. So Nevada, Dems were up, right? They were up, at this point in 2020, they were up 7.5, it looks. Now, they're down 5.5. And what's insane about that, them being down at all in early voting, because the election day vote will be more conservative, and you can look at the polls, it proves it. Or at least it indicates. I never like to say polls prove. Look at this. There are more registered Democrats than Republicans by 2 points also in Nevada, but Republicans are voting them by 5 points in early voting. Such concerning data for the Democrats. And then last one, Pennsylvania, which actually I think has the biggest shift of any of them, and it is the most key state. Look at Pennsylvania. In 2020, at this point, Dems were up 50. This time they're up 30, a 20-point shift. Absolutely huge. And Democrats have almost 400,000 less ballots that have already been voted. Republicans, it seems as if they have almost 50,000 more. Absolutely huge for the Republicans. Absolutely huge. So the early voting data looks really good for Republicans. We'll see what happens on election day. But I think everything I pointed to proves one thing. All of this together. You can I guess you could say argue with everything I said. But just looking unbiased at all this data, Donald Trump is surging. And for Kamala Harris, it's at the wrong time. So anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. Please be sure to comment down below and suggest new videos for me to make. Please like, please subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. As always, thank you so much for watching. EPI, out.